So today we are going to continue the session from the previous session. So in the previous session we have I have given some glitch of the idea how the parameters play a vital role and the significance factor, and we have seen the formulas. Now in today's session we will see that how the flight performance, how we make use of the formula, and what kind of possible factors or conditions that we may need to apply in the numericals, right? So we are going to the straight away the type of method to understand. So basically they ask a gravity free, okay, sometimes gravity free condition or drag free space flight. Now if there are these are derivation sort of thing, so here I don't have to remember in the derivation, but in the question if they ask like at free drag consideration or gravity free consideration, so that time you have to make use of this particular formula. So basically in the last class we have done the applications of this formula, that mass ratio. So mass ratio we have gone through some few nomenclatures as m naught, which denoted as initial mass, which is equals to the propellant mass but the final mass. Final mass in the sense that when the entire propellant is over and only the structural weight is left out, so that means that mf or the final mass. Now so we have seen that if the entire equations are being divided by m naught, what will be the expression? So first of all, this 1 equals to, we denote by zeta, mp by m naught is denoted by propellant mass fraction, and that is mp by m naught, or propellant mass by total initial mass, plus mr. So from here zeta equals to 1 minus of mr. So this is a equation that we have seen. Now if this kind of questions comes that no or a gravity free condition or no drag or drag free condition, right, and they ask you find out the velocity, increment in velocity or increment of velocity burn, or effective exhaust velocity. So on that kind of scenario you have to make use of this particular formula. Okay, now del u is a increment or the change in speed, flight speed or whatever they ask, equals to minus c ln 1 minus of zeta. Zeta in the sense that mass your propellant mass fraction plus u naught, or you can make use of this formula, or as a result you can remember this formula as well. Del u equals to c ln m naught by mf. Now what is m naught? We have already discussed. Is a initial mass and mf is the final mass. And what is c? C is the effective velocity, okay, or effective exhaust velocity. Now effective exhaust velocity we can also relate the equation in terms of specific impulse into gravity. So this equation can be further extend to del u I specific impulse into gravity ln. Now we know mr means mf by m naught, right, the final mass by the initial mass. So here we have m naught by mf, so we can also write 1 by MR. There is some textbook they have defined the MR in terms of lambda, capital lambda. So and there are some other textbook that they have represent 1 by MR as lambda. So please be careful about the notation. So so in your competitive exam nobody is going to check the convention or the notation that you have considered. The only fact they are going to see is whether you have given the right answer. So so better I will request avoid those kind of scenario, and you can remember this equation alone. Right? Then let's moving forward to the another okay, so this is what I have explained already. Now sometimes they can also ask something like a Tukhulsky rocket equation. So this is nothing but the Tukhulsky rocket equation. Okay. Now here very important facts that you need to understand here, how this effective exhaust velocity depends on the vehicle velocity, and how these two factors have quite highly dependent with the propellant mass fraction. Okay. So propellant mass fraction, we can see that that drastically the slope is increasing, right? So here we have 0.6, then then we have 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, then 0.99 we can see, right? Now what we can understand from here, first one of the in a practical exam point of view, so what we know, MR is MF by M naught. And what is propellant efficiency? Propellant efficiency, zeta, is propellant mass to the total weight. Okay, so this weight can range between 0.6 to 0.99. Okay, if it is 0.6 to 0.9, that means as an increase in velocity there is no drastical increase in the vehicle velocity, but as you are increasing the mass, the propellant mass fraction, right, as you are drastically increasing your propellant mass fraction, there as an increase in vehicle velocity there will be a good range of increase in the effective exhaust velocity as well. So this is one of the important concept. Simultaneously you can also see there is an increase, this is a ratio of that inverse of mass ratio. Okay, inverse of mass ratio, and how it affects with the specific impulse with respect to the maximum vehicle velocity. Okay, so here also we can see that at some particular point of mass ratio it's almost a very steep increase in the maximum flight velocity, and drastically it increases as we increase the mass ratio, right? Now there are one more thing we can say, that in case of this particular diagram, right, average effective exhaust velocity, it's a linear curve, right, whereas in the other side it's not linearly but drastically it is increasing, and as we are increasing the specific impulse we can attain a very good maximum vehicle velocity, right? So this is another very important takeaway. Maybe someone more question they can ask, that how the mass ratio play a vital role, how it affects the maximum vehicle velocity. So this is the understanding from this particular figure. and same goes like increment increase in velocity, that is del u. Okay, we denote it as del u. How it also play an vital role. So this is again the same thing, like if the effective speed increases, that means effective exhaust velocity increases, we can attain a better increment of this velocity. This is a burnout velocity we call as, okay, this is called as a burnout velocity. Now in the upcoming days we will be solve some problem based on this particular equation. Now there is a second category. This was the first category. So when this is applicable, when it is a gravity free or drag free space flights. Now if the question or something somewhere related with the forces acting on the vehicle in the atmosphere, right? So on that scenario there will be some existence of aerodynamic forces. That means what are the two aerodynamic force? Lift force and the drag force. So there will be some existence of aerodynamic force and as well as some effect of the gravitational force as well. So in that if they have mentioned that, okay, or if they have mentioned assuming a constant gravitational accelerations, so that kind of a problem you need to use this formula. Okay, same concept. Now in some book or some notes you can also find this equation as specific impulse into gravity ln 1 by mr minus T into G. T is a burning time into gravity. So you can also remember this. Don't forget this minus T. That's the only difference. Okay. So u of with acceleration is del u of your drag free condition minus T into G, basically, right? Okay, now these are the formulas. Please write down side by side. Okay, now moving to the next is multi-stage rocket. Okay, so yesterday we were talking about the multi-stage single stage, about the classifications of the rocket. Now talking about a glitch of this rocket and aircraft. Obviously the aircrafts are being we say the aircrafts which are mostly used by air breathing engine like jet engine, turbofan, turboprop, right, and even ramjet. These are the air breathing engine. Now whereas rocket, so we use a engine where it does that engine does not have a capacity itself capacity to combust. For combustion we need air. So the air, if we go outside the atmosphere we will not get air with a proper mixture. Then how the combustion will be processed? So for that we need to carry a separate tank. So we carry a separate tank for the fuel, separate tank for the oxidizer. Now how we align this tank, right? So there also lot many, and what should be the how far how far the rocket need to travel, right? How far kilometer, whether it is aiming for low earth orbit, whether it's aiming for the geostationary launching a geostationary satellite, which orbital purpose it has been developed. So based on the range of travel of that particular rocket, we need to carry the propellant, right? So to understand the propellant, how you are going to align the propellant in the form of series or parallel. There are two ways of putting it together. one is series and one is in parallel. So you can see what that means by the series. So there is a two beautiful figure in front of you. I hope that will give you the clear insight, right? So basically we also called this as a, mostly the parallel one we call as a in the form of boosters, right? So these are main we can say that main structure, main body, and along with that we have boosters which eject out when the time comes, or the power once it get boosted up by itself, right? Now nowadays what happened, nowadays we use a hybrid one where we use both the combination of serial and as well as the parallel. So at the time of takeoff, the parallel boosters will be eject off once it gets some inertia. Then after that, each stage by stage we have a different kind of propellant, and once that propellant is done, it will be ejecting outside, right? So this is what the mechanism they used in the practical implementation, combining a hybrid one where we combines both the series and as well as the parallel one. So maybe you can expect a question that they will give you some pictorial views of series, parallel, and ask you to identify the type or the nature of a rocket staging. So accordingly you have to do that. Now coming to this multi-stage, right? Multi-stage, there are few factors, okay? One is a payload factor, payload ratio. Payload ratio is nothing, again here we are going to denote with a different type of nomenclatures, okay? So you can take as lambda as a payload ratio, which is ratio between the payload mass to the initial mass. Payload mass by the initial mass, right? So what is meant by payload mass? It's a, you can for mathematically it is clearly understandable, okay? Or initial mass is also known as a total mass sometimes. Okay, and what is structural weight ratio or structural fraction? It is denoted by delta. Is a structural mass by initial mass, right? Now previously we have seen what is the initial mass. I have said initial mass is nothing but the payload mass plus mf, right? Final. And what I said, when the complete combustion will be done or there is no fuel left over and only we'll have the structural weight, is called the mf, right? Now when it is fully loaded, so the mf or this same equation can be converted in the form of payload plus the structural, right? That is, moreover the mf is nothing but the payload and the structural, right? So m naught equals to mp plus mpl plus ms. Now the entire equation I am dividing by m naught, okay? Entire equation I am dividing by m naught. Now obviously I will get 1 here, this will get cancel off, so I will get 1, right? Equals to mp by m naught. What is the ratio? It's a propellant mass fraction, which is denoted by zeta, okay? We have, then we have mpl by m naught, that is a your payload mass by initial mass, which is denoted by lambda. Okay, then we have structural by the total weight, is known as a delt. So sum of all those fractions should be equals to 1. So there are some numericals they used to you need to remember this formula. Okay, so I am giving you some time, so please kindly note down this formula. Right, kindly note down this formula. So instead of here L means it is PL. Okay, so let me briefly give you the idea. So what is the mass ratio? Mass ratio, we have seen it is the initial okay, so they have given the reverse effect. Okay, that means 1 by mr. What is the mass ratio? Is mf by m naught. What is mf? I have said just now, which is nothing but the payload plus the structural weight to the initial weight. So if you do this, sometimes they will give you payload weight and they will give you the structural weight and they will ask you identify the mass ratio. So you can make use of this formula. Next, payload ratio. So what was the payload ratio formula? So by m naught. Okay, so if you want to transform this MPL, right, so m naught equals to MPL plus MS plus you have the other one is like P, right. So MPL is going to be m naught minus of ms plus mp, right? You can make use of that m naught minus ms plus mp by m naught. So if you put that over here, so you are getting m naught minus, if you get you can also find in terms of the ratio fractions, or you can keep it as it is. Alright, you can keep them. Okay, next we have structural coefficient, that means ms by m naught, right? ms, again similar way we can find out what is the value of ms, m naught minus payload plus propellant. Okay, and then you have this m naught. Similarly, mass fraction is by total. Okay, now another very important consideration, sometimes they might ask you that which is a suitable range of the based on the required thing. Now again I said lambda defines here is 1 by mr. Okay, here the lambda defines 1 by mr. What is mr? Mf by m naught. Okay, so that should be ranging within 2 to 10. It's quite obvious, or we can expect a question like which of the suitable range for the mass ratio. Okay, 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 0 1, like kind of variety of options they can provide you, right? So for a mass flow rate, the standard one is 2 to 10. Then comes structural efficiency, okay, ranging from 0.08 to 0.5. Then we have propellant ratio 0.5 to 0.9, and lambda they have lambda is a payload ratio, okay, 0.01 to 0.2. Now you can also remember this formula as well, right? You can remember this formula. These formulas are going to be very useful. Maybe they can give you some numericals using that. So kindly note down this. Now we will switch over to some of the classifications of the chemical rocket. I think previous class we was discussing what are the different types, how they play a very vital role. So in this particular class we will mostly focus on the liquid and the important we can say components, or how it works, and if time permits we will go for the solid and the nuclear and other thermostatic propellant. Okay, so rocket propulsion basically classified in three: chemical, nuclear and thermostatic, thermodynamic. So chemical is further classified in the form of liquid, solid, hybrid and nuclear fission, fusion. So and the hydrodynamic again have the further classifications. So please this theoretical part I will suggest that you can prepare. Right, now let's move on. I will come to this slide later on. First let me focus on the liquid combustor chamber. Now when how the combustion takes place, first of all in a rocket. Okay. Now there will be of tank, okay, one tank of liquid, whatever the it's of fuel, another is going to be the oxidizer. Now why they use oxidizer and the fuel, already have discussed them, right? Now what happens, there are lot many ways that how the fuel and the air will be feeded into the combustion chamber. Now this entire thing is called as a combustion chamber, right? Now the question comes that how does oxidizer and fuel are going to mix, how they are whether they are having just like an your piston engine, we had some spark igniter, right? Or a diesel engine, there is a fuel injector, right? So by itself it will get combusted, or whether there is initiation, how they are going to fire, how they are going to ignite it, right? So this is a ejector, right? The word ejector, both the fuel from the fuel tank and the oxidizer from the oxidizer tank, it comes and meet to the injector. Injector, that means something which is ejecting out. So there are lot many different process of this injector, right? So first of all it depends on whether the oxidizer channel and the fuel channel will be coinciding together, or maybe oxidizer one side, alternative fuel, oxidizer then fuel then oxidizer, or oxidizer and fuel combinedly all together. So how you are going to mix the fuel and air? What will be their mixture, or what should be their mixing ratio? That is another a vital role. Just like any kind of combustion chamber, right? What is our prime requirement? We need a large amount of oxygen to combust. As compared with the fuel, we need a very fine amount of fuel. The same will be goes for the liquid combustion chamber. For a liquid combustion chamber, we can combust with the ratio of, that means air to fuel ratio will be around 5 to 7 ideally, right? 5 to 7 ideally it can combust. So I hope I have made you clear the role of the injector, where they, how or which mode they come in contact with each other inside the cylinder. Now let's assume that any one of the mechanism they have choose, and like how there is a swelling movement across the combustion chamber. It is just have initiated the combustion chamber, and after that it started to move from the convergence section. This is called as a convergence section. This is a throat section, and this is a nozzle section, right? And this complete this part to this part is called as a CD nozzle. Now why we call as a CD nozzle? To define the convergent divergent nozzle. Now again the question comes, why we prefer to use CD nozzle, or why do we implement CD nozzle for in the rocket engine? Why we do so? Why we do so? Any importance? Anything vital? The reason behind, as the flight speed is moving at some more than Mach 2 or 3 hypersonic, we need to expel here, we need to produce a thrust. How the thrust produced? By means of kinetic energy, right? The basic principle, we need to actually create or increase the kinetic energy, right? Half mv square. Now how we can increase the velocity? Based on the shape and the size. So if we keep this shape like this, right, it's a divergent section, we can able to attain the exhaust velocity quite higher, and as a result the pressure loss at the end, or the back pressure or the exit pressure, is going to be the less. So this concept already you have studied. Now looking more deep into it, or let's look into the aerodynamics point of view, how actually it helps to increase the kinetic energy. The so I think we have studied 3 types of 3 or 4 types of shock waves. Sorry, 3 to 4 types of shock wave we have studied, and out of that, what are those types? There are oblique shock wave, they are normal shock wave, they are bow shock wave, expansion shock wave, right? Now here I will focus on 2 basic. One is the expansion shock wave, and one is the oblique shock wave. Now what is the concept of oblique shock wave? Now this is the member AB, and there is another plane BC which is deflected some theta angle above the reference line, right? BC line, BC dash is a reference line, straight line. So as compared with this straight line, it is inclined above of some theta angle. Now in this particular structure, right, and if the flow is Mach number greater than 1, what will happen? It will obtain a, or it will create an oblique shock wave, right? Oblique shock wave we denote by this. And what will happens with the property? Obviously, if this is a zone 1 and this is a zone 2, the Mach number will decrease, pressure, temperature, density will increase, right? I am talking about the static pressure, the temperature and the density will be increasing, but what will happen? The velocity or the Mach number decreases, right? This is what happened in the your oblique shock wave. Now the same scenario, same kind of thing, AB and C dash is a reference plane, and but I am inclining the angle theta in a downward direction, right? This plane here it was deflected upwards and here I am deflecting downwards, right? The space becomes wider and the flow moves over here is at Mach number greater than 1. Now what will happen? The flow will expand. So from that only the name came as a expansion shock wave or expansion wave, right? The name came. Now what will be the property? Behind the shock wave, if it is region 1 and 2, it's been splitted with M1 okay. What will be the property? Obviously the Mach 2 is going to increase. That means Mach 2 means at this particular range or the across the expansion shock wave, the Mach number increases, so the pressure, temperature and density will fall, right? It's all because of this shape. Now if I observe the same shape in this, from the throat section, from the throat to the divergence section, what we can see? If I take a small finite elements, each and every sector, right, which is having a theta is inclining downwards, right? So there will be a causing of multiple expansion waves. So each and every waves, across the wave there will be a change in Mach number. So that means the fall of or the drop of pressure and the hike in kinetic energy in the form of increasing the velocity. And this is what the science behind this using the divergence section in the rocket engine. I hope I made it clear to everyone. Now there are some methods, right? So basically we have a CD nozzle, there's a thrust chamber, okay, injector. Now the length of the thrust chamber depends on the type of injector we use and the type of fuel and air. So whether it's a hydrogolic, there is one propellant called hydrogolic, that means it has a property to self ignite, okay. They are highly volatile, those fuels are highly volatile, right? So when they are come in contact with one another, or there is a spraying or atomizations, so they get combusted by itself. Now understanding the type of injectors, there are different types of injectors. Now how then that will decide that what should be the length of the combustion chamber, right? Now the diameter of the throat, okay, the diameter of the throat will decide that what is how much will be the thrust obtained by this particular combustion chamber, or you can say the particular rocket engine. So based on the thrust produced by that particular engine, we can determine what should be the area. Obviously there is some mathematical formulas are there. There is a relation with the area of the throat to the exit area. There is some relations. Using that you can able to find out what should be the thrust. So this is the fundamental things of this. Now coming back, looking into some important vital parameters, what are the different liquid rockets, and what are the design factors that play a vital role. Okay, now first of all, one is a liquid rockets. We have a single propellant. That single propellant act as a oxidizer as a liquid, right? Fuel, sorry. So that is called as a monopropellant. Bipropellant, you will have a separate tank called fuel and oxidizer. Now let's look into some advantages, like what is the advantage it can be for a monopropellant. So if a single component or the single propellant can serve the purpose for both the fuel and oxidizer, then your gross weight of the aircraft will be reduced, because you don't need to carry a separate tank for both for the fuel and the oxidizer, because for that you get to have a very complex systems. Then you have to take care of the other instrumentations and systems for the connectivity and other things. Maintenance, it increases the maintenance cost, the large number of tank. For a single it's going to be come down, but again how you are going to compromise with the specific impulse. So this monopropellant and bipropellant both have serve its own advantages and disadvantages. Now why mostly they prefer bipropellant? Because of its specific impulse. As in the previous lecture I have discussed that figure of merit, right? So specific impulse is quite high for a bipropellant, right? Then solid propellant, we'll see what are the different types of solid propellants and all. Now what are the different types, what are the design factors that depends on the performance characteristics or parameters. First is a sizing, that what should be the length, what should be the area, what should be the volume, and what should be the residence time. Residence time means how much is the burning time. So that overall will give you your specific impulse. Okay, so these are the important factors for designing, or you can say design consideration for combustion chamber. Okay, right. These are a very important. You have to remember what are the different types of hypergolic combinations, what are the different types of bipropellant combination. Okay, there is quite a few questions comes from here. So bipropellant, already have said there is two separate liquid propellants and oxidizer fuel tank. Hypergolic is a self-igniting when they come in contact with one another between the oxidizer and the fuel, right? Now what are those common fuels? Okay, hypergolic fuels. So one is a hydrogen. Hydrogen is one of the monopropellant as well, and have a characteristic of the hypergolic in nature, right? Hydrogen, one of the very important one. Then is a monomethyl hydrogen. Okay, monomethyl hydrogen. Then comes unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrogen. So you have to remember these names. Okay, now there is a short form for this unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrogen. In short, they also called as UDMH. there is another name of this, is called as UDMH. Okay, this is very important. Then we have oxidizer with a nitrogen trioxide, sometimes NTO. Okay, and there are some more combinations which I have mentioned here, so please study this chemical values, right? Okay. So that is a monomethane. So monomethane hydrogen they call as MH. Now further there are some combination of liquid oxidizer. Okay, liquid where there are some combinations of fuel as well. Now there can be a question like identify what are the common oxidizer. So you should know what is meant by liquid fluorine. If they have given it is a fuel or the oxidizer. If they have given the nitrogen trioxide, whether it is whether it's a oxygen or a fuel. So if it is a hydrogen, whether it is a fuel or oxidizer, you should know, right? So please, these are the commonly asked questions that you should have a good idea about the different types of fuel and the oxidizer. So for the few or the common names of oxidizer, you can see liquid oxygen, liquid fluorine, then nitrogen trioxide, then hydrogen peroxide. Okay, and some of the fuels which are of monopropellant type, which I have said hydrogen already I mentioned before. Then hydrogen peroxide is also known as a monopropellant. Then nitromethane is also a monopropellant. Then methyl acetylene is also a monopropellant. So there can be a question like find out the suitable answer among the list. You have to find out which is going to be the monopropellant or oxidizer and other thing, right? So again I have said there's a fuel. Now let's look into the specific impulse, right? Specific impulse. So there can be a question from here, which among just an order series. So which combination will give you the highest you can say specific impulse. So first I can rank here is a liquid fluorine as oxidizer and hydrogen liquid hydrogen as a fuel, is having or serving the highest specific impulse. The second highest we can pick, I think this one, the combination, the most widely used, right? The most widely used is liquid oxygen and the liquid hydrogen. Then gradually you have to analyze which are the values which give the maximum value. So again if I pick that liquid oxygen and hydrogen also give the second best value. Then semi cryogenic, that is liquid oxygen and you have the kerosene. Okay, this is kerosene giving us 300 specific impulse, right? So likewise we are having another few more types. We have non hypergolic, that means we need a separate injector system to combust both the fuel and the air, oxidizer. Monopropellant, that itself has a substance to burn by itself, right? The example hydrogen peroxide and the hydrogen. Then likewise coal gas propellant, okay, which is usually stored in ambient temperature but at a very high speed it gives a low performance. So we need the system to be controlled very carefully. Then cryogenic system, obviously by the name, it will be operated in the low temperature. Then storable propellant, then space storable propellant, then gel propellant. What is mean by gel propellant? Okay. Um, so all those things you have to study. So I think there are a few more things are there. So let me come here and discuss something about the type of injectors today. Okay, so there are, as I've said before, there are different types of injectors: double impinging stream pattern, triple impinging stream pattern, self impinging, shower head, and then the last is we have the coaxial injector, then variable injector, concentric tube injector. So very initially when the concept of injector came, we have developed with the double impinging stream. Okay, so there will be alternative manifolds of the fuel and air based on the mixing ratio. The whole of the injector will be controlled based on the amount of mixing we need for that particular combustion chamber. So same goes for the triple. Now self impinging stream pattern is oxygen will be fired, then fuel will be fired by itself, then again alternative fuel oxygen will be done alternatively by itself. Okay, but what happens, both on those cases are the conventional one. None of this gives a very good result. Now later on it comes to a practice of the shower head stream pattern. Now shower head, it does a very good mixing, but for that we need a very lengthy thrust chamber. So if you have a very lengthy thrust chamber, the weight of the engine will also increase. So that is again we need to compromise with that. So this is one of the disadvantage for having or using shower head stream pattern. Then we have a coaxial injector or hollow post or sleeve element. Okay, so the benefit of this coaxial injector is especially used for the bipropellant or the liquid when you mix an effective mixing of the fuel and air together. So here both the fuel and air get mixed with the proper ratio with the mechanism and being ejected out from the ejector very perfectly, right? So most of the you can say that in the realistic rocket engine at present, they all prefer to use a coaxial injector, right? Now variable injector area with a concentric tube injector, this is not in much use because it can be implemented for a very small rocket, very small rocket. Okay, so the most advantageous among this is the only one is the coaxial injector, right? So next class we will have a look on some of the propellants. Okay, and then we will go through how this work, the thrust vector controlling and other mechanism, about the systems of both gas pressure feed system and turbo pump feed system, how they are different with one another and what are the advantages and some of the disadvantages of this turbo pump system and gas pressure feed system. And we will see some of the solid propellants. Okay, what are the key factors, and then some more about we will see some of the equation numericals about that, how to solve the solid propellant problem, right? Then hybrid rockets, glitch of this electric propulsion system, how what are the benefits, positive facts, negative facts. We will discuss that as well in the upcoming class.